Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare.
Thank you. All right. Well, happy Wednesday. Good to have everyone physically here, those of you online. And I'm not attached to the outcome here since our topic's attachment. We've been working through these analytical approaches for the whole path to enlightenment, the Lam Rim Chenmo, and breaking down each of the components that we would reflect upon in a meditative process. And what we've been doing is just working on the discussion piece, understanding the approach, and then each week going through and trying to apply that in your life. So the advice last week was to notice the shortcomings of attachments. And I'm sure everyone's nailed that, probably have a lot to report back. And so we'll wrap, yeah, Alyssa, you got it, right? You got a few things. Good. Okay. Just, we'll dig in. We'll just get to I think the final section. So there's 3 sub-points here. And the first of the antidotes was reflecting on the shortcomings. And having gone through all that, I just wanted to get to the very end here. Attachment lies behind many non-virtuous actions like stealing, lying, or killing, which create problems both now and in the future. It is also a hindrance to spiritual practice. Since it causes our mind to be repeatedly distracted, we're unable to develop concentration and other realizations needed to reach liberation and enlightenment. But I think when we all look at any of our misconduct, was attachment at the core of that? Was I attached to something? Was I afraid I wouldn't get something, or someone might not look at me a certain way that, attached to how somebody sees me? I mean, we can go right to the worldly concerns and discover, attachments playing a huge role in me stealing, lying, misrepresenting. I mean, you can look at your tax forms. There's our generosity, things that we just start looking at behavior that we don't feel good about, and attachment's going to be underlying that. And I think specifically at the end of last week, I said, if you notice yourself stressed, angry, frustrated, resentful, anxious, whatever, the question is, what are you attached to? And then there was this nice visceral understanding of how attachments play a role, which is different than wholesome desire, motivation that could be meaningful. Attachments, this exaggerated view. So that was just a little recap from last week. We'll get into the second point here. And as always, those of you online, you can unmute at any time and chime in. We want discussion as much as possible. All right. Reflect on impermanence. If you are convinced of the faults of attachment and wish to decrease it, so first we see that it's unhelpful. One of the most effective remedies is to contemplate impermanence. The people and things that we're attached to are not permanent, but change every moment and will eventually perish. Considering this, does it make sense to cling, wishing the object to be there forever? Even before the object disappears, it will gradually age and become less attractive and desirable. Imagine how the object of your attachment will look after a year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. Does that impact your feelings towards it? So, yeah, let's stop at that point. Everything's changing all the time, right? And we're attached to something. The relationship with this person, my job, the town of Carbondale. Some people are kind of like, wow, look at all that stuff in the highway, new buildings, people. That's not the way it used to be. And, we get like some idea that I can get life the way I want it and then bubble wrap it, you know, and a lot of suffering there. But we notice things change. Our relationships change, Every time I say things change, I just think this body used to be different. Man, like this down here used to be up here. It's kind of, and then, I don't know, gravity or something. All that muscle up here. I got this nice belly. And my feet get bigger too. I don't know, but yeah, I'm shorter and my feet are bigger. Is that like gravity? Is that, pretty sure that's how that, yeah. Is that how that works? Yeah, okay. So things change, right? And our bodies change, relationships change, all that. And so when we think about attachment, we really are striving for this thing, and then that thing's going to change. One of the things that they're pointing out, how will something, be in 5 years, 10 years? When I was a monk, one of the meditations were, especially when like lust arises, desire, well, then, the person looks very attractive, is what's 20 years from now, what's 30 years from now, and then you start noticing, yeah, that aging thing. And then we can look at how, I can look at how I used to look, and how I look today, and my aging, and anyone I'm attached to and their aging. And then you start thinking, are you attached to this outer appearance that you find attractive, or the inner qualities of a person? And when we get attached to the outer ones, you can just start to see how it changes. And that would take an edge off. But then they'd have you go a little further and go, what's underneath the skin? Muscles, tissues, organs, and you start looking beyond the outer layer of skin, and it gets pretty gross as you start reflecting on the object of your attachment. That's what they teach monks, and go down and kind of see the pus and the stuff and all that, and all of a sudden you're just not so enticed. Um, my teacher also had a thing where he's like, just see everyone as skeletons, like for equanimity, just equanimity, like underneath all that, just skeletons. And that was a way to just see, people in this equal way without all the attachment to the outer trappings. But the point being is, whatever we're attached to, it's going to change. And how do we idealize, whether it's ourselves, our relationships, our jobs, the things that we have acquired, the home, the garden, the car that we're trying to maintain. They all change. And so just understanding impermanence is a real antidote to that attachment, especially when it's a craving and a desire. The next part's going to get to see how your attachment changes, even if the object doesn't seem to. Like we have a lot of things that don't seem to change. I can pull out I have an old, what are they, BlackBerry phones, right? Some Blackberries, right? That was cool when they came out. Had a little keyboard on it. Well, I still have one sitting at home. I don't know what to do with it. Got to dispose of it in a certain way. But man, when I got that thing, yeah, Obama had one of those. He didn't want to give up his BlackBerry when he became president. I remember that. Well, I'm not very attached to that anymore, right? It doesn't seem to have changed much, but my attachment to it has, even though it is maroon. I was a monk, got maroon BlackBerry, got Master Robes. Yeah. Uh, had a maroon Vespa too. Monk on a maroon Vespa, maroon helmet. Yeah. Yeah, I was rolling. No attachment. Dangerous though with the ropes, because if that hooked on anything, you had to really tuck everything in. So when we look at attachment, we idealize things, just the understanding that they are going to change. Even my way of viewing them will change. Just so helpful. And yeah, they'll get to the next point. So I don't want to get too into that. But just noticing aging, and it's, with people is one thing, but anything we're attached to over time, we can just notice the certain qualities will be difficult. I think I'm finding a flaw in that already. I mean, technically it's not, but my mind, like old cars, like some people find that old car and they'll take that thing and they'll restore it and they'll keep it locked up in the garage. And you kind of wonder about that. Yeah. I've had some friends that restored like a 39 Ford, spent weekends, polished every little piece, got it just so. So I don't think that it would look that much different if you kept taking care of it. 100 years, maybe. Got to approach this from all angles, see if it holds up. May not offer the joy that you're thinking. That's this part. The pleasure you experience with the object is also impermanent. It may last a few seconds, minutes, or hours, but eventually it fades. Also, if the object is truly pleasurable, you should always enjoy it. Is that the case, or are you annoyed? Oops, this thing's popped up. Or are there times when you feel bored or annoyed with it? So, favorite song, play that 100 times, see how it works. Overcoming it's a small world after all. Anybody ever do that one? It's a small world after all. It's, you do that for Laura didn't let me sing it anymore after Disneyland. I don't know why. I felt like I knew all the verses. I mean, I was in the groove. Was not allowed to sing it in the house or near her anywhere at any time. That ban might be lifted. It's been a while. Could have changed. I'm not sure. Overcoming attachment does not mean we must distance ourselves from people, give away our belongings, and never allow ourselves to experience pleasure. We can still enjoy these things, but without the unrealistic clinging and expectations that attachment brings. In fact, without attachment, we'll probably enjoy them even more. Also, by decreasing attachment to people and increasing loving kindness, compassion, and patience, our relationships with them will be healthier, more satisfying. And so, that's just reiterating initial point to be made, how attachment blocks love. Attachment actually is a hindrance to love, to compassion, because it's so me-centered and exaggerated. And so just remembering impermanence. The challenge here is that we can become detached. And we don't want detached. We want non-attached. So detached, I don't care. And then we don't let people into our lives, we don't let them in our hearts. They might be here, might not be here. You get impermanence, then why should I care? I'll just, it's not worth my time. And so being detached is the opposite. That's a sort of near enemy. It looks like it. You're going with the flow, but basically you're blocking your heart. You're disassociating from the good qualities. So we want to be able to have that open-hearted engagement, appreciation, and connection instead of disconnection. And so this is a hard balance. The next point we'll get to, having a balance and a perspective. But what happens a lot is people get real serious about their practice, and then they detach from, the things that used to bring them pleasure, and then view all those things as hindrances, and then, have this simple, kind of life, and then, the worldly samsara just, doesn't matter to them, and just slowly and slowly and slowly disconnect. And that's a real hindrance. Whereas we see the value of everyone and everything is giving life to this opportunity to cultivate our highest qualities, to engage fully, to master this path, which is so critical in the first big stage of it, to have good connection, loving kindness, compassion, care, concern. That's really going to get us somewhere instead of the isolative, detached, solitary kind of life. At some point, with an open heart, far on the path, really solid foundation, connection with all beings, compassion flowing, really healthy to go away, spend some time in solitude and cultivate that next level. But for most of us here, it's we're still trying to be nice to our neighbor, uh, trying to not be defensive when our partners point out something. That's a good one. And learning how the people that we engage with, give us the qualities of life that we have. That really open-hearted connection without the grasping, clinging, exaggerated attachment of what's in it for me. So that's what we're seeking there. All right. Wow, we're whipping through this. Nobody's interrupting me. At some point you will, right? Please. Okay, let me. And then the third is to cultivate this balanced view. Since attachment is based on exaggerated view of an object, seeing it as 100% wonderful, or at least very wonderful, without any faults, it can be helpful to deliberately bring to mind unpleasant or negative aspects of the object. For example, you might think, if I owned a BMW, I would be so happy. It's funny, as soon as I read that, I thought, if I owned a BMW, I couldn't afford to maintain it. Different thought process. But yeah, if we had something really nice, I would be so happy. But once you consider the expenses, there they go, maintenance and worries involved in owning such a car, your ideas will become more realistic. Or you might feel attraction for someone and think, if I could have a relationship with that person, it would be so wonderful. Reflecting that the person may have hidden faults, or that you might run into conflicts later, will help you gain a more balanced view. But be careful. Using this remedy is not meant to lead to aversion for the person or the object. If you notice that happening, focus on their positive traits and cultivate loving kindness and compassion, wishing them to be happy and free of suffering. Understand that the point of this remedy to attachment is to develop a realistic, balanced view that sees both the good and bad sides of the object. And that's what I was hinting at. We could just, this sucks. Samsara sucks. Everything's samsara. And get really out of balance with this. Instead of everything is an incredible unfolding of life that is filled with, the struggles and conditionings and karma and klesha and habits of a lot of people who are confused, trying to be happy. And in this weird, messy world, there's an incredible amount of compassion and kindness and people helping each other and creating the conditions for others to be well. And, that's quite remarkable. And so maintaining this balanced view and staying away from exaggerations, again, it could go the other way. Some people have this view, it's all good, it's all love, it's all beautiful, it's all good, nothing's wrong. And no, it's not all good. There's violence, there's sexual trafficking, there's wars, there's, just incredible abuse and violence in the world. It's messy. And it's not helpful to pretend it's just all wonderful. And likewise, especially now in the news and what we get bombarded with, what our attention gets hooked to just see everything's going, just downhill. It's a cascade of everything terrible, and be unable to see the goodness that's all around you in your neighborhoods, in your relationships, and in yourself, which I think this gets most out of balance, right? We exaggerate our negative qualities. They become these big hurdles we need to work on. And we totally miss all the good we do all day. So no balance there either. So therein lies understanding this attachment is always based in misperception, unbalanced, unrealistic view of oneself, or sources of happiness and suffering, exaggerated my negative qualities, exaggerating the good qualities of whatever it is I'm seeking, or the harmful qualities of some people that also might have something to offer. And so really managing this balanced view of recognizing the value in whatever opportunity, person, event, or thing is in our life, that they all offer an opportunity to cultivate merit and wisdom, to engage with it in a way that produces some greater understanding of oneself and some ability to improve yourself or the world we're living in, to bring virtue to it. And in that way, I think there's a balanced view, is whatever situations arise, how can I be helpful? How can I engage with this in a way that is productive, helping me engage in virtue or understand self and the world that we're living in better? And when that's a perspective, then the other stuff just fades away. The motivation just being the two accumulations: merit, wisdom, how to make good use of the rare and precious life that we have in the world we're living in. And it's, everything and everyone's a gift in a sense. Even the difficult people are a gift to understand how to have boundaries. Wonderful people, real deep appreciation to have such caring people in my life. And the events that I engage in, all of which can bring meaning, whether I'm doing the dishes, walking to work, volunteering, enduring someone yelling at me. They're all opportunities to cultivate merit and wisdom. And with that view, then we're constantly using the moments of our life in ways that are cultivating this freedom that we seek. So every morning, for those of you who do the morning practice, this opportune physical form is more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. You only gain its like the once, right? So hard to get, so easily destroyed. So hard to get, so easily destroyed. It's temporary, it comes once. And everything is an opportunity in this one day to make good use of this opportunity. Like a lightning bolt in the sky, it can be gone. And then we can get attached to holding that view and being a really good practitioner. Yeah. And so even letting go of that. So as we talked about last week, at the core root issue of all of this is always a misunderstanding of oneself, of one's experience, a misunderstanding of how things exist and causes of happiness and suffering. And out of that misunderstanding, the attachment forms. And this attachment born of misunderstanding drives this whole wheel of karma and klesha, of habits and conditioning that drive insecurity, fear, resentment, anger, frustration, and misperception again and again around what would make me happy and what would be absolutely terrible. And not even understanding that my happiness and my feelings of difficulty have a lot to do with me, not the event itself. It has something to do with that, but it has a lot to do with me. And I feel like I should be done talking by now. Anybody else got anything to say? Microphone. Yeah, I think it's turned off. Just hit that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
I know in the past, I think you've differentiated between attachment and wholesome ambition, or this idea of like doing good, virtuous behavior. I was wondering if you could maybe expand upon something that I'm experiencing. I feel it's like a tendency to get attached to that wholesome ambition, or I want like things or people to get better, more quickly, or to act in a way that I see as being less attached, and I just kind of struggling with that right now.
So, and everybody online, you heard that microphone's working. Good. Yeah, I love we have that new system. What were we talking about?
Both of them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but in it sounds like in relation to others. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah, also known as codependence, but and this becomes the challenge. Is I was trying to when we'd run like mindfulness courses or programs, almost every course ever, whoever's in that course working on himself had said, "Man, I need to get my husband in here." Or I need to get my kid in here, or I need to get my partner in here. Like, I need to get them in there. And then we did a thing with the school system here, and I did a middle school, or I did a elementary. And the teachers were all about how do we get the students to do this instead of how do you do it, right? And that's this really interesting dynamic that happens is that as I'm getting more clear and I understand more, I see how the people close to me suffer. Right? It's not that you want them to change because you need them to change for you, but we see them suffering, and we don't want them to suffer. Right? So then the attachment arises out of compassion. It says, here's my loved ones. They're stuck in this. They keep doing these things. I see the suffering. I see the mistakes. And that's hard. It's a very difficult place to be. And that's where I think Kurt on here talks about this a lot, where he starts to understand that that attachment, even about them, not wanting them to suffer, keep doing these habits, is really our own self-centeredness, that I'm uncomfortable with them doing that. And so his method is starting to recognize it's his own discomfort. He wants them to be better so he feels better. And I don't have to see them doing that. And I think that's a pretty skillful view. And when we have clarity that the people in our lives, the people that we love and that we care about, they have their own journey. And for me, I recognize I did a lot of harmful things. And it played out to get to a place where I then found other ways to live. It needed to play out, right? I needed to extinguish every possible avenue whatsoever to extract some sense of pleasure out of unwholesome activities as I possibly could, to where it just didn't work anymore. And then this. And so people's journeys, to let them suffer, can be a compassionate thing, because, and sometimes we can intervene, right? But always from a place of being a role model. And I always say, never underestimate the power of being a good example. That even though my loved ones may do unwholesome things, do things like that, being an example of how it could be different, that's registering that there is another way, that there is another path. I often use a story of my older brother who's a heroin addict. And I used to go tutor his kids and, do some stuff around the house and and I never lectured him. I just helped kids. I got clean. Two of my other brothers got clean, so they were role models. We were role models. One day, after, who knew? One day he would get clean, and his whole life change, world change. And for me, seeing two of my brothers in their life, so people notice, and the examples are there, and we just need to be thoughtful about our interventions, whether they can be helpful or not. There's a part of it that shows they're showing us our mind, my judgments, how I think they should be. And then I've also realized there's a lot of people who do a lot of things that I don't think they should do, which worked out really well for them. Apparently, I am not the all-seer of how people should act. Yeah. I mean, someone against all odds, just do things that I just think are absolutely horrific, and their life turned out great, and they became good people. So, in other words, we don't know how it's all going to play out, but what we can do is they're offering you an opportunity to engage with them skillfully, with compassion, recognizing these patterns, and every now and then you might be able to intervene in a skillful way. But the most skillful way is always being a good example of other ways, other choices that could be made. That makes sense. Yeah. Ashley.
Yeah, it's really helpful that it happened to be talking about attachment tonight, because I was kind of struggling with attachment today. Attachment to my to-do list. I had this list of things I really wanted to get done. I think I got one of them done, because it was like one thing after another that interrupted and got me off track. And so you're saying that what you said, that everything offers an opportunity to try to find opportunity in the distraction too, and that I was just being attached to the to-do list. And the feeling I get of, oh, I got it all done, when I needed to let go of that and just be present with whatever was happening. So it was a good learning experience.
What a wonderful, yeah. Thank you for sharing. Was the one thing that you got done making the to-do list?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But
I've
it's
been there.
done. It's written. So
Yeah, wrote it. Yeah. Yeah, what a wonderful example how we can get attached, even, how the day should go with the to-do list, what I want to have happen, and people show up, things go differently. Yeah, thank you. Larry.
Couple of things. One is my ride in Disneyland broke down while we were in the small world.
Oh,
we
you
had
got to
to-
hear that song?
For about an hour. So
You want me to sing it to you?
No, no, it's really, it's still going in my head. The other one is that I was observing wildlife around my house, and there was a dead blue jay, and I wondered if the animals felt the loss of parents, or hey, Bob, the blue jay died, did you hear, or what? And then it went to the deer and the other birds and me, and how do other sentient beings, do they get attached? Are they easily let go? Or does a deer know there's a tomorrow, or what happened yesterday? Or I was just pondering that when I look at people behaving the way they do they think on what they're actually doing, or is there a point? Or and I can kind of hear a chatter of the world, of everyone thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna this. I went there. I did this. I'm gonna practice. I'm being quiet," and so on. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing your reflection. One of the things just that you're triggering my mind, which is the current environment of the multitasking, distracted world we live in, is that very few people are aware of what they're doing or why they're doing it consciously. And there's not many opportunities for people to even engage in a reflection that you just talked about. Attention is grabbed from the moment people get up till they go to sleep. And I just, listen to another thing about why Americans can't sleep. And, that's a huge thing right now. A huge number of Americans can't sleep. And, just the patterns of this busyness and distraction. And so it's wonderful just to hear you be able to sit in your environment and reflect with life, that a lot of people don't even know why they're angry or why they feel frustrated or have a chance to reframe a situation because we don't have time to think about it. Got a to-do list and can't shift from that, as Ashley did, to attend to the new environment. I think there's just less and less below the surface access anymore. People are just into things, reacting to the world as it shows up. And you're hearing some sadness in my voice, and I think that's a big issue. That's why it's so important that we train our mind, that we have some time to detox from all of that multifaceted copy and paste, email, texting, just the social media, the news, the on-demand distraction, and have a little time with ourselves, Leave the phone on the table when you go to the bathroom, Be with yourself for a couple minutes. See how that works. Roxanne.
Hi.
Hi.
What Larry was talking about, animals, reminded me of this book that I read about a man in Africa who had a sanctuary for wild animals, and he managed to convince a herd of elephants to stay in his sanctuary, even though their matriarch had been killed somewhere else. And so the book goes on about what it's like at this sanctuary, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think it was after the book was published, he died of a heart attack. And the elephants who were on the other end of the sanctuary came and stood vigil for him, and for several days, and then they left altogether. And then the following year, on the same day, the anniversary of his death, they came back again, all of them, in a group, and stood vigil for him again. And it just makes me think that, and I've seen lots of videos of animals taking care of each other, like an orangutan and a hunting dog become good friends at a sanctuary, stuff like that. And I think animals aren't given enough credit by humans for their feelings. I think they do have feelings. And there was a deaf woman who was in the news recently, and she was climbing a mountain in Alaska. She fell 700 feet, and a white husky showed up and took care of her until rescuers could come. And it wasn't a trained mountain dog type of dog, it was just, it showed up and stayed with her until she was rescued. So I don't know, man. I just really think there's more to what's going on with animals than what the average person gives them credit for. That's it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, I think, there's a lot of evidence. They have emotions, they have connections, they form bonds, they care, they mourn. And from a Buddhist perspective, they're sentient beings, Yeah. They have Buddha nature just like us. Alyssa.
Okay, thank you. Just about the animal thing too. Somebody, a very young friend of mine, we were talking about horses, and she said, we hardly know anything about the human brain. Why do you think we should know so much about the horse brain? When we were talking about our horses' experiences. And yeah, the emotions that range with the animals is so extraordinary, at least in my observation. Humble. Not nearly enough observation. Anyway, about attachment, there were so many things that happened this week. Opportunities for me to see the destructiveness of my attachments. And so I'm thinking, God, which one do I even share as an example? And I guess I don't need to go into any of the details, but what I was able to do was really be shown very, very clearly these attachments to a sense of self that doesn't exist. And I was actually able to reframe things in such a way that brought me a lot of peace, I guess. Like just self-comfort, which then allowed me to soften around the experience of feeling the frustration and irritation and also physical pain. And then be a better human for other people. It was a really interesting way to notice what I was experiencing and to one of the things I thought about actually, John, was you, because a couple of weeks ago you mentioned having had a bout of food poisoning, and so did I. And so when I was experiencing it, I was remembering what you said. And so I was trying to, what would John Bruna do? Right. And it was so helpful to just sort of separate my perceived experience from the bodily experience. And can I experience pain without experiencing suffering? And it's a hard one. But I was starting to touch on the possibility of it. And it just it brings me back over and over and over again to feeling so grateful to be practicing and having these tools of just a little bit more awareness, a little bit more ability to notice what my mind is experiencing, and a openness or space to be able to notice if that's feeling good, or if I can reframe something, if I'm deluded in my thinking, and how to see something a little more clearly, a little more realistically. And I had several opportunities this week to do that. So thank you.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Yeah, what a clear example of, and what everybody's talking about, is agency. That we don't need to be a prisoner of the emotion, the moment, the event, with some stability of mind. There can be that opportunity to have a choice. Without that stability of mind, there's no choice. That little potential of, what I think of as free will, which is in very little supply in this world. The ability to have emotions, mind, body, movement towards something, and have the ability to know that this other thing would be the healthy thing, and to be able to actually act upon it. I mean, that's incredible. To take some feelings, question it, reframe it like you described, and know that I'm reframing to reality. And to know that the other reaction is out of misunderstanding. Like, how amazing is that? How empowering is that? And if we can increase those moments, it's interesting, as Alyssa, you shared that, you had many opportunities. We all did, some of us are just unaware of all the moments we had. So we have to be aware that we have the opportunity, and not just the triggered feelings and emotions that come with that, but that incredible capacity to consciously choose a different thought process, a different reframing, coming back to reality. That's the skill of free will. And we had a retreat, a little half day, Sunday. And we're talking about reward systems, catching yourself in that moment, or being aware that you did a healthy thing, having a shift, making a choice, and giving yourself a reward for making a healthy choice. So my mind body wants to do this, and I'm resisting, and then I get to go, oh yeah, I have free will, man. I'm not doing that. Just putting those reward points in real time, not later when we process, but in those moments of choice, to celebrate free will, to just go, man, everything about me wants to do this, but I know this is what I'll value in doing that. And just like man, I have some free will. I'm doing something. I have a reward, a celebration of that. And then it had me thinking about, somebody was talking about, our minds are always seeking novelty, right? Like I can do something healthy for a couple of weeks, and then it's not so novel anymore, so it goes off. And, my meditation, suddenly it's not so novel anymore, and I got to think, what's novel is free will. So when I notice my resistance to meditation and I decide to do it anyway, that's novel. And it doesn't happen all the time, that conscious shift. What's really, celebrating the novelty of my capacity to engage in healthy behaviors and activities and with attention. I mean, that's pretty novel. And then when I recognize how unique or interesting or rare that is, then it's interesting because we're attracted to novelty. And so I've been trying to really notice these patterns of resistance and those moments where I can choose something else and just really celebrate that as really quite a wondrous thing, instead of it being work, because then it's work. But now it's kind of interesting. I get to feel all this and do this. Pretty amazing. Instead of, man, this is so hard. And so just that little shift there, I've been finding helpful, which sounds like you've been describing through that process.
I think part of the fear of like medical diagnoses and going through things is like if you haven't had surgery before, that's really scary. And once you've had experiences with surgery, then it becomes a little bit less scary. Like I just had to have my fourth surgery. It's my first surgery on my chest, but like when the doctors explained that it's on the outside of my rib cage, and so it's not as invasive as other things I've had before. That kind of helped me, and I think all of our studies and not being as attached to our bodies and thinking of them like you described as like a skeleton with flesh on it or something has definitely impacted the way I relate to my body. And so when I was just preparing for surgery, and my doctor was going over things about stuff that I said that my chest was like just decoration, that it really wasn't that important. Is just like decoration at this point. And then I sort of think that like Edward Scissorhands went wild a little bit, and it just doesn't seem as like scary in a way of detaching from the physical experience of it and thinking of it in different terms. Like the doctor said, "What are you in pain?" And I said, "No." It really kind of feels like just like a cat is hanging off the front of me with their claws. And like as if I like break it down as to does it really hurt, it's sort of like no, it like that's kind of what it feels like to me. It's like it's not really, I don't have to take pain medication for it. It's just like it feels like I'm walking around with the cat going like that. So I don't, it's just helping not to be so attached to my body or think of the like fixate on the pain. I don't know. That's just what's working for me. Just like like thinking of it in different terms. And I think like the way you approach things with comedy, John, and detachment and kind of like a little bit of irreverence, that just attitude just helps me too.
Wonderful. Yeah. That capacity you're bringing to bring the attitude and the perspective, what wonderful examples. 'Cause, Yeah, could be very scary, could be very painful, and so many people suffered. So good to hear that everything went so well for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not without complications and things. It doesn't make it like really easy. It's not like a walk in the park. I have like 3 feet of scars wrapped around me, but but it's like if I break it down in that minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day thing, it's like that part's really not that bad. Like I'll heal from it. A lot of people have been through a lot worse, and um, it's like I said, it's external. It's not like I had like a big incision down my chest and my rib cage opened up or something like that would be a lot more scary than what I had. So I just try to think of it in comparison to other things that are a lot scarier.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, good to see you up and doing
Thank
well.
you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're coming towards end here, and all that's on the website. So let's go ahead and take a moment to become present and prepare to dedicate the merit and wisdom of our time together. Many things we could have been doing on a Wednesday night, but we have gathered together to engage in these precious teachings that have been passed down through centuries, unbroken in lineage, through the efforts of countless others. We ourselves have created the conditions in our own lives to seek to understand, to improve the quality of our life and the way we offer ourselves to the world, to extract the essence of these teachings in ways that are meaningful for us to be living a life that is compassionate and caring, to reduce suffering, cultivate understanding. Incredible amount of merit there. So I invite you to bring to mind the intention to dedicate any and all efforts we've gathered here together and throughout our lifetimes for the benefit of others. May the ripples of our time together, the way we engage in the world, find its way into the world, be of benefit to others. And for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may continue to remove the afflictions that trouble us, purify our minds, open our hearts, and recognize our own Buddha nature being of greatest benefit to all. And with that, those who'd care to, invite you to join me in the formal dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare